Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys, Jack and Dave here. We're going to be bringing you guys a bit of a discussion on kind of players that need to impress Ange Postecoglou during this preseason over in Australia. The sort of players that I would say are on the fringe, but also players that maybe can find a way to impress him right away so that they could get perhaps a good position in his squad. And it could be a bit of a smaller squad than usual because of no European football. But Dave, I think the first player we're going to start off with is going to be a certain Tanguy Ndombele. Before we talk into everybody's favorite player, one of my favorite players that I do want to see his redemption arc, make sure to smash that like button for us, everybody. Also, do leave a comment down below as to which players you think need to probably impress Ange Postecoglou straight away, right off the bat during this preseason. But Dave, let's talk about Tanguy Ndombele. A few questions maybe I want to get you started with is, can he convince Postecoglou that he can play in a midfield three, perhaps alongside Madison, kind of in the same 11? And kind of what I mean by that is, can he sort of fill in for Bentancur, maybe until he returns from that injury, and kind of maybe fill in as sort of a number 8, a number 6, a number 10, whatever you think maybe is the best position, basically. Can he sort of fill in that midfield alongside a Madison and a Basuma somehow?
Look, I think, Jack, the first thing that Ndombele needs to do is buy into
Sure.
Postecoglou's motto, which is "we never stop." He either does that or he doesn't. If he does, he'd be in this team and he wouldn't have been shipped out on loan over the last few years. And it's just down to this guy, whether to prove or not, he can last that 90 minutes because the talent is there, Jack. This guy can be a game changer at any given moment when he wants to be. And that's the problem. It can't just be always on his terms. It has to be when the club need him to perform as well. And that's what the argument on my side has always ever been. You know, it's just frustration because you see the talent in the guy, but he doesn't want to bring the best of himself out or give his all to the cause. And that's the big thing with him this summer. Look, Jack, for me, it's 100% last chance saloon. You know, even as a backup guy, I get this guy returns as a Serie A winner, but realistically, most of that game time was always off the bench, and you do not pay 60 odd million, make him one of your most expensive signings of all time, plus give the guy 200 grand a week, you know, to be a bench warmer or to have an impact off the bench. That's the sort of guy that you put into your starting lineup and you expect him to perform week in, week out. You expect him to be your game changer. And the sad thing about this one is that he is that guy, but he lacks the fitness required to adapt to the Premier League. It's all well and good doing it in France, doing it in Italy. Their leagues are a lot slower, less physical, less demanding. You know, the Premier League is the quickest, the fastest league in the world. Also, one of the most physical league in the world. So when you look at it, that's why Ndombele has to get up to speed, and that's why when he's in the Premier League and at Tottenham Hotspur, there will always be questions around the fitness side of him, because that is what stops him from being a great player in the Premier League. And we got to remember, we signed this guy when he was 22. He's now 26 years of age. And, you know, he's done more than enough things to warrant not being given this chance. So I just hope that this guy grabs it with both hands, Jack, and really runs with it. And I think, look, the reason why I think many people would say there's a chance here, Jack, is because on the last two managers, Mourinho and Conte, right, the midfield roles are very disciplined, more defensive oriented, and that's not Ndombele's game. So I think the reason why you and maybe many others out there want him to be given the chance is because it is under a manager that might play to his strengths, right?
Yeah, I think that is probably the main core of the reasons why people feel like he could have a bit of a redemption here. I just feel like if he were to win back maybe fans like yourself, Dave, what he would need to do actually is sort of be able to make a huge impact straight away, not as a sub, not as a player off the bench, but he needs to actually find a way to fill in for the absence of Rodrigo Bentancur. Of course, he's not going to do everything that Bentancur does, but he could do it in his own way, right? He could be able to change himself. And I sort of have mentioned this in the past, where I think in order for Tanguy to actually be successful in this Ange Postecoglou system, he has to sort of change himself. It's not really how it's sort of been in the past, where I think teams that have done well with Tanguy Ndombele, they sort of kind of adapted to sort of, you know, suit his strengths, then sort of to play to his game and be able to sort of make him comfortable. And nowadays, you know, with the fact that, again, Dave, like you said, he's not 22 anymore, he's 26 years old, and sort of that potential is starting to, you know, be kind of questioned, you know, whether he'll really even ever reach it. He needs to actually adapt his own game and sort of change himself for the team. And then that way you can start to, see if he can actually be able to deliver some of those magical things that we know he can do in kind of a midfield three. And where I actually think he's best suited is actually higher up the pitch, sort of as more of a creative type midfielder. But I actually do see him maybe playing alongside a James Maddison if there really were sort of an anchor type midfielder of just a Basuma as sort of a deep lying number 6. And then he had a kind of like maybe a Tanguy Ndombele type player sort of dropping deep to pick up the ball off of him when need be, because he is a great press breaker. And he also does have that good eye to sort of break the lines, and also just that eye to sort of all of a sudden with one move sort of take 2 or 3 players out of the game. It feels like then you have kind of a 3-on-2 or, even more than that at times. But I feel like Tanguy Ndombele, in order for him to really work and kind of convince fans to take him back again, it's actually going to need to be him sort of to change himself, but also to sort of make that Rodrigo Bentancur absence feel like nothing, make it feel like it really wasn't all that bad, or it really wasn't as much of a pain as it could be, because this upcoming season, it will be a huge absence like it was at the end of last season as well. So it's going to be up to Ndombele to feel like if he can fill that hole. If he does fill that hole, I could see him actually winning a lot of fans like yourself back, Dave.
Look, it's going to take a good half season of consistent performances to really sort of win me over, and some real game changer moments. And I feel that's warranted, But look, the thing is, Jack, in a world, or in a footballing world where everything is regimented, it's all system orientated. What we need is that maverick who can really sort of break that sort of,
Thinking.
that structure. And Ndombele does that in abundance when he wants to. Like you said, he can take 2-3 players out of the game. It can really be, a huge factor in this Spurs midfield. But the question comes down to, does he want to be a part of it? Does he not? So let's wait and see what happens.
Last thing I would mention too is that if he does have a good attitude in training, and if he gets along with a lot of, the members of staff, let's say better than Gio ends up, kind of, because Gio has a bit of a reputation of not getting along with members of staff and some of the players. If, let's say, Tanguy has a better relationship with some of the players and staff, and he also impresses, Ange Postecoglou, I would say that would give him a good chance of maybe sticking around here at Spurs. But a player that you've kind of done a video on before that a lot of people, I think, really did appreciate, because it came out of nowhere, and that's what we're trying to do sometimes, is just sort of talk about topics that, maybe you might not expect, sometimes. And Japhet Tanganga, Dave, you sort of had a bit of things to say about. You want to take this one away? How does he need to impress Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, Japhet Tanganga, look, Jack, I'll class him different to the likes of Davy, Steyer, and Sanchez, where it's actually been his injuries rather than bad performances that have almost made him a forgotten man at Tottenham Hotspur, but also way down the pecking order, because with the injuries that he sort of suffered under Jose and under Conte, by the time he gets back fit, he's sort of just nowhere near the starting 11, nowhere near the team. And look, when it comes to Tanganga, Jack, for me, I think if anyone does deserve that second chance going on this preseason tour, I think it's this guy. If we can get the guy that, made his debut performance against Liverpool, put who was it, Grealish and Sterling in his pocket against Man City, we would have a very good defender on our hands there, Jack. And he stayed injury-free last season, but this is the thing around Tanganga. It's all about him staying injury-free. If he can't stay injury-free, then unfortunately the club does have to move on. It's elite-level sports. It's where we're at. We can't just keep players around here, due to injuries or because we feel sorry for them. If he's not fit and he can't play, then you just have to move him on at the end of the day. But what I will say about it, Jack, is when you look at the signings that were, or the lack of signings that we're supposedly making in centre-back, it's been Van de Ven, Tapsoba, and Clement Langley, and even Mark Guehi to a degree. They've all been mentioned, right? But they all play on the left for their respective teams. So there hasn't been any on the right. And I feel Tanganga has an opportunity to be there as backup to Romero. Now, what I will say was with Tanganga, he's got to expect that he's not just going to walk straight into this defense, that he will have to sit there and bide his time. But with Romero, there will be injuries and there will be suspensions. So there will be opportunities there. One thing he definitely has to improve on, though, Jack, if he really wants to make that impression, is being good on the football, especially in Ange Postecoglou's team. We cannot afford to give away cheap balls on the halfway line from our centre-backs, because it just blows us wide open. It makes us very, very vulnerable. So Tanganga does have to get better on the ball, but if you're looking for someone that still has that aggressiveness, if Romero's out injured, Tanganga's your guy. Plus, you know, he can double up as a right back if we do suffer injuries or whatever else. I know we've got enough options there, but I'd never write off carrying too many injuries with the amount we suffered last season. So based on all of that, I actually think Tanganga has a real shot, and it's just up to him to get out there, stay fit this preseason, take every opportunity that's given to him, and just show signs of improvement.
If you're looking for anybody that's sort of retaining any value for the future that you maybe are forced to keep around, because that's what everybody talks about with that defense is like players that you're kind of forced to keep because you can't get rid of everybody in one window. It would be near impossible. I think plenty of people have mentioned. And I think Tanganga is an interesting argument for a guy that maybe is worth, kind of giving another shot to. And whether he wants that shot or not is obviously, another thing. We can't predict that. But if he is eager to impress Postecoglou, I would love to see if he can do it and to see him actually replace the likes of a Rodon, the likes of a Sanchez and, Dyer, etc. Because I think he has that athleticism and he has actually, a bit of age on his side too. He's a lot younger and he can maybe work on some of these things that Dave mentioned that he could probably, develop a bit more. Whereas the other guys, I think they're kind of just already done players. Like they're sort of, what you get. Whereas Tanganga still has some time on his side potentially. So interesting arguments there on Tanganga. Let us know, everybody, in the comments down below if you think Tanganga has a chance actually of maybe impressing Postecoglou and sort of, replacing those defenders that I mentioned. A player that's a very divisive one, though, Dave, is Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. I feel like he's somebody that everybody sort of mentioned right away that's going to, not be able to fit, under this system. He's not going to really find a comfortable position in that midfield. But I think what maybe people forget about Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, right, is that he's always impressed every single manager that's come in here. Every single guy that's come through the door, he's made a good impression under. So if Ange is the one that he doesn't, I'd be surprised because he has that sort of, mentality Viking, sort of cliche thing on his side, which I think Ange will actually be a bit of an admirer of. He also as well has that adaptability that I think also Ange Postecoglou could also enjoy because Hojbjerg has either done it as sort of a deeper, sort of destroying midfielder. He's also done it as maybe for Denmark. I think he played a bit higher up where he was actually asked to be a bit more box to box and sort of kind of provide goals and assists. He's done that even this season in a midfield too, alongside Bentancur. So I feel like what Hojbjerg has on his side is kind of that stamina, that work rate, that sort of kind of, no nonsense attitude that I don't think is ever a problem attitude in the team. And then also as well, the fact that he's always fit, always available, and always there to be picked. Maybe as well, too, the fact that he can kind of sort of plug into different places in the midfield. Of course, he's not going to be absolutely brilliant in every spot in the midfield, but he can sort of do a job, in my opinion. And he can actually do a really good job, especially when well rested. I'd not be surprised if he actually all of a sudden, proved people wrong once again and made a huge impression to Postecoglou.
Yeah, look, Jack, when it comes to Hojbjerg, you're absolutely spot on. Under every single manager, there's always this debate. Can Hojbjerg fit into his system? Can Hojbjerg adapt? When in reality, every manager that comes in here picks him and he's a mainstay of their team. He barely misses a game. Every single week he is picked. Everyone looks and, goes, oh, well, he can't play the role McGregor played at Celtic. Hojbjerg's 10 times the player McGregor is. 10 times the player. Why can't he play it? Look, the argument with Hojbjerg is Jack, that he's... Alistair Gold put it perfectly earlier on in an article where he said people, accuse him of being a jack of all trades but a master of none. And I think that's sort of...
That's accurate.
Fair, but that's what has been asked of him the last few years. Under Jose Mourinho, when he was mopping up behind Ndombele, Lo Celso and Dele Alli, that's when you really seen the best of Hojbjerg. But since then, players have sort of, for whatever reason, in Dele Alli case, it's completely different. But, with the likes of Lo Celso and Ndombele, for whatever reason, they haven't gone on to perform, right? Which meant then they'd have to be shipped out. And then Hojbjerg has had to step up and do what they were supposed to do in this team. And Hojbjerg has become a victim of Tottenham not really having any sort of attacking midfielders in here that can unlock the opposition's team, which is not what we signed Hojbjerg for in the first place. We signed Hojbjerg to mop up behind all of our attacking talent. And when you look at some of the attacking talent we have again this time around going into the campaign, we need someone that's going to do that role. And I think Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg can't play that. Where the difference is, Jack, is when we are on the ball, sometimes we will be looking at someone to be a bit more expansive in that number 6 in terms of the
Correct.
passing range. And I think that's why many people are predicting Bazuma to be that guy. And I think he will be. I think you probably agree that he will be, Jack. But what I guess we're trying to say is, it's just not to write Hojbjerg off. Let's not be so quick to say he doesn't fit Ange Postecoglou's system, because realistically, we haven't actually heard that from the club. What we or in any reports, what we have heard is that Hojbjerg himself might want to leave, which is a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, he is a leader in that dressing room. He is a player that Ange knows he can depend on. So for the first season of being here, I don't think as a manager it wouldn't make sense for me to get rid of him, because if my system doesn't work, I always know I can revert to put him in there, and I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it. Now, will this time round be a lot harder for Hojbjerg to get into the midfield? Yes, there will. I think we're all predicting Maddison will start and Bazuma will start, which means there's one spot open for 7 guys at the minute trying to pursue that. Skip, Sarr, Ndombele, stuff like that. So, he's got a lot of, work to do this summer. But I ain't writing him off by any means or anything. No. I think him and Ange will actually probably get along. I think they see football very, very similar.
Even if Hojbjerg has indicated in some manner that he wants to leave, he's just not a guy that seems like he would down tools in any regard, especially the amount of minutes that he's given us, the amount of games that he's given us. But also on top of that, I do feel like Hojbjerg is sort of a player that, like you maybe mentioned, he will sort of find a place in this team. Like he sort of has always done that. He will sort of adapt himself, change himself. And also what maybe hasn't been noticed, I think, or at least not appreciated as much, is he's improved, I think, in his time at Spurs. He started out, like you said, as a big ball winner, doing all the sort of dirty work that other players weren't really good enough at or really didn't want to do in the first place. Then I think he's adapted to being able to play pretty well and pretty efficiently in a midfield too, alongside Bentancur, and be able to score, as well as provide assists. And then was able to run the midfield in plenty of games in the Champions League with Bentancur alongside him. So he's proven, I think, to be a competent midfielder that can actually adapt to different shapes, different, instructions, and can just do, I think, a variety of different things. And it's not like he does it, with 10 out of 10, impeccable ability, but there are positions I think he thrives in more. But he is a bit more of an adaptable player, I think, than maybe, let's say, an Oliver Skip is, or even than a Tanguy Ndombele is. Let's say Tanguy Ndombele doesn't impress. You could see Hojbjerg take that spot maybe alongside, Maddison or something like that in the midfield with Bazuma there too. So just don't rule him out. Absolutely right, Dave. Don't rule him out. But let's talk about Djed Spence. I feel like he has serious potential as a great right back. He's tall, has that electric pace. He's good going forward. And, that's what's kind of needed more nowadays in the modern game. And he's actually quite good, I feel like, with how he takes his man on. He can come inside, come in field with how he takes his man on, which is, again, another thing I feel like in the modern game that a lot of managers kind of do look for and like. And I feel like he probably, at the end of the day, sort of when you look into the future, maybe has a better chance of being like a solid, kind of more well-rounded right back than actually Pedro Porro does in a back four. I feel like he's got to work, though, on some of those defensive fundamentals of his game, though, Dave. And these are a bunch of ifs that I sort of mentioned. I think some of the things that I mentioned just previously, like him being, tall, quick, strong, sort of very, eager to go forward and very good at taking on his man. I think all those are proven, and we know that that's what we're going to get with Djed Spence. And all those sort of make what could be a great right back, but he doesn't have the defensive thing on his side. So do you feel like that's what he needs to improve on in order to impress Ange?
I think, Jack, some of the defensive areas he does need work on, but also maybe his final product as well, I think, does need a bit of work as well. But look, when it comes to Djed Spence, Jack, I think this guy's been very unfortunate. Like, Daniel Levy signed him. Conte made it known before even Spence arrived here that he was a club signing. And ultimately, the guy was used as a pawn between a power struggle between Conte getting what he wanted and Levy saying, this is what we can afford. So I feel sorry for Djed Spence. And then ultimately, Conte ended up winning out because we went and signed Porro, which put Spence even further down the pecking order. So I feel really sorry for the guy. But look, Jack, this is a preseason where so far he's looking very happy in and around the squad. And I just hope that, he can really hit the ground running. Any opportunity that presents itself this season, which there will be a couple, he has to take. He can't make any mistakes. And unfortunately, that's just where he's at. He can't make any mistakes going defensively or going forward. Everything he has to do will be scrutinized. Everyone's looking for one mistake in the guy so that they can have an excuse to send them out on loan. So unfortunately, with the position that he finds himself in, he has to be absolutely flawless, which is harsh on the kid, which is tough on the kid, Jack. But also, if I was Spence, I'd be going in with the mindset that do not rule this out, because we don't know what Gill's future holds. And we've only got one right winger at the club in Kulusevski. So Porro is technically good enough to play right wing and can double up. So there might be opportunities that present itself. It's whether Spence himself can stay on the ball and keep that mindset that just stay ready for my opportunity. Because he is one, if he's kept around, you might not see him till October, till November. But if he gets that up, if he presses enough to stay around, he has to keep that mindset of wait for my opportunity, take it and impress, and just stay motivated. But look, it sounds harsh on the kid, Jack, but that's the reality of it, right?
I think you covered it all, Dave. I think that's spot on. That was the only thing I was going to mention at the end, is that how does he handle maybe being a backup? Because that's probably best case scenario for him. He could end up out displacing Emerson, but unlikely, I think. And how does he handle playing as, sort of more of that backup role? And like you said, until November, maybe getting his minutes. And last time he was treated quite harshly, but how does he handle it? And does he handle it differently this time? Honestly, Dave, I think you covered it quite well. But Pape Matar hadn't gotten a lot of minutes last season, but when he did, I thought he did take them, and he proved a lot of people that he has a huge ceiling and he is really talented. And I feel like he can play almost anywhere. Like, I feel like he could play, in the number 8, he could play in the number 6. He can probably even deputize a bit higher up the pitch if you needed him to. He's just such a talented kid, Dave. And this sort of possession-based system, I think, is only going to thrive and, suit him even more. And he has so many midfielders that he can learn off of, with even Hojbjerg, you have Basuma, Bentancur, you have Madison, so many good midfielders that he can learn off. Even Tanguy Ndombele maybe learns a few flicks and tricks and whatnot as well, and maybe that eye for a pass that Tanguy does bring too. But what do you think, Dave? Like, Pape Matar, how can he impress Ange?
Look, Jack, for me, I think, first of all, I think he's been unfortunate under Antonio Conte. I think his age actually went against him, to be honest with you. I think if he was Skip's age, we might have seen more of the guy right now. But Jack, when we look at Pape Matar, right, although we've seen glimpses that he can do it all. He can muck in and go win the ball back. He can play. He's got a good passing range about him. Look, what I feel like Sarr has to do this preseason, Jack, is the fact that Skip is homegrown will always go against Sarr. And the fact that there is similar age to young guns in that midfield, they're more or less always competing for the same minutes that become available. So Pape Matar this season has to show, with any minutes given, that he is light years ahead of Ollie Skip. And that's just the harsh reality of it again. Another one who can't make any mistakes, who has to be flawless. I don't think he'll get into the team straight away in that third position that we reckon is open, but he is fighting to be kept around and be a part of this squad, and there will be minutes for him. Ange Postecoglou will have to make substitutions in that midfield around 65, 70 minutes to be able to keep it relentless the way he likes it. So for me, Pape Matar is competing against Ollie Skip, and all he has to do is just show that he's 10 times better and 10 times the player than what Ollie Skip is. If not, unfortunately, I think Ollie Skip might stay around because of the homegrown stats. That's why it's very, very important for Pape Matar just to show he's 10 times better.
Another player that needs to prove that he's better than, the others around him, I think, is actually Sergio Reguilon. And this is the last player we're going to finish with here. And I think it's somebody that Dave and I have stuck up for, actually, kind of in the past, because I really don't understand sort of the Reggie narrative. I don't really get how he was sort of immediately put down underneath Sessegnon. I understand that Sessegnon had a great few games for Antonio Conte, especially defensively. He proved to be very good. But I think Reggie was always better than Sessegnon going forward, especially he has more pace. He has a bit more kind of, I think, especially initial burst of speed for sure, has a bit more. He also has, I think, a much better cross. I think that was what was proving to, be a bit concerning with Sessegnon, was that he started to kind of be unable to put in any decent cross in or even get it past, his defender. Whereas Reggie, I think, has always been able to put in a pretty decent cross. And I think what's going to be interesting to see is, now that he's back into a back four, can he actually show, that some of that initial, kind of characteristics of a traditional sort of kind of good attacking, Spanish right back? Because you look at guys like Danny Carvajal, I think, back in the days, and I think of some other sort of kind of, traditional sort of Spanish fullbacks, that were actually quite good. I think there was even a guy, like Juan Fran or whatever, Atletico Madrid. I always liked him. I liked a lot of sort of those kind of nasty, sort of kind of gritty, kind of shithousery sort of kind of Spanish, sort of fullbacks. And what they kind of all had was a very good cross. They had a bit of that sort of nastiness to them when they were defending. Maybe they weren't always the best or most solid defensively, but they never sort of backed down from the challenge, right? They were always good at sort of, kind of at least standing up to whoever they were coming up against. And they always had sort of that electric pace, I think, down the wing, and sort of that relentless, electric pace of just getting up and down. And I think that's what made Reggie, at least to me, a decent fullback. I'm not saying he's ever been, a great or, maybe the perfect fullback, but I think he's been a lot better than people made him out to be. But Dave, he's also a guy that's well liked around the, camp. Everybody seems to be friends with Reggie, maybe a bit of a popular guy around the dressing room. Can he displace someone like a Ben Davies? Can he actually, make a name for himself? Can he find a spot?
Can't believe you even asked me that question, Jack. I think, yes, of course he can. It's a no-brainer. Look, when it comes to Reguilon, Jack, let's be honest, he was used as a make-weight to give Antonio Conte the man he wanted, which was Perisic. And the only reason why he was moved on and Session was kept is because, again, Session offers that homegrown registration for the league and the European competitions. And that's why I always argue we need to stop with these guys and get better homegrown players in. Because what's happening then is some of our foreign exports are being shipped out, not based on ability, but based on their status, which I don't like. And I think is completely wrong. So all Reguilon has to do, Jack, is come back and show that that decision was wrong. That left-hand side was our weakest area of the pitch last season, outside the centre-back. So all he's got to do is just come back and show what we've been missing. A bit of solidity there, and he's in.
Absolutely. Everybody, let us know if there are any players that you felt like we might have missed out on, players that you felt like, maybe we gave too much of a chance to, or maybe a bit too much left to, or some players that you feel like, do need to impress. Ange Postecoglou straight away. Hit that like button, please, on the way out. Leave a comment down below. Feel free to grab a membership as well if you feel like supporting the channel in an extra way, but we will be seeing you because there is a big fan show coming up tomorrow as well.
Come on, you Spurs. In the mighty Ange we trust.